Welcome to the Green Machine, the nature aquarium specialist. This short video documents professional aquascaper James Findley replanting an 1800-litre aquarium. The Green Machine has 3 large display aquariums and several smaller ones. It was founded by James in 2007 to bring the nature aquarium to the UK. The Green Machine is a nature aquarium specialist, so they carry quite literally hundreds of aquatic plants, the largest selection of aquatic hardscape in the UK, the largest nature aquarium display tanks, and a specialist selection of fish. They test everything they stock to make sure that it works and ensure that they have expert working knowledge of everything they supply. The Green Machine are experts in helping customers to achieve a beautiful planted tank, so a trip to their store or their website is always worthwhile. When planting a tank, preparation is vital. The first stage in a nature aquarium is the substrate. James chose to use the ADA substrate system in this aquarium. In a planted tank, it is essential to use a good substrate system to ensure that the aquatic plant will have enough nutrients to grow. Healthy plants are an essential element in the aquarium ecosystem because they produce the oxygen needed by the fish. So if you have healthy, thriving plants, they will help to ensure a healthy balance within the natural environment of your nature aquarium. Like all plants, aquatic plants need nutrients, light and CO2 to grow. In this aquascape, James has chosen to use 4 150-watt metal halide lights and a CO2 injection via a custom CO2 kit by the Green Machine. Notice how James uses a paintbrush to ensure that the substrate materials are spread evenly across the base of the aquarium. Nature aquariums of this size are quite a rarity, and working with aquariums of this size presents several challenges to the aquascaper. Fortunately, James is well practiced in the art of planting large aquariums. You can see more of his work in store or online at www.thegreenmachineonline.com. To make the task easier, James and his team use a movable scaffold to provide a more suitable working platform and access point. Because substrate is so important, James has chosen to use some substrate additives. James explains that these are not essential, but he finds that they do create a better environment that leads to enhanced plant growth and less tank maintenance as the nature aquarium develops. Here you can see the final mixture of substrate additives. James now uses a paintbrush to move the mixture away from the edges of the aquarium into the central area where he intends to place the plants. Because James is using an island layout, he will not be planting around the edges, so there does not need to be any substrate in these areas. By removing the substrate, it allows the sand to be layered more thinly, creating a more aesthetically pleasing appearance. For more layout styles and information, please view the articles on layout in the tips and tricks section of the website at www.thegreenmachineonline.com. James now spreads the sand evenly in the areas which will not be planted in and adds some sand to create extra height in the centre. An island layout creates a central island of plants with an unplanted area around it. When it can be viewed from 360 degrees, as this aquarium can be, it is one of the most difficult layouts to perfect. James will now add the top layer of substrate. To prevent the substrate from spilling out onto the sand, he places temporary cardboard barriers around the island shape where he intends to plant. Once the cardboard is secured, James tips the substrate into the island area, making it deeper or higher in the centre. James then uses a rake to spread the substrate, leaving it higher in the middle to create a greater sense of depth in the aquarium. Once the substrate is completed, it is time to select the hardscape, sometimes known as layout materials. The hardscape is a very important element because it forms the bones of the aquascape. If you get the hardscape right, the rest of the aquascape will flow naturally from that. The terms hardscape or layout materials refer to the rocks or stones that are placed in the aquarium. It is important to make sure that the material is suitable for the planted tank, because many rocks or wood are not suitable as they affect the chemistry of the water. At the Green Machine, they have the largest selection of aquatic hardscape in the UK, so you can hand select your perfect pieces, and if you need any advice or assistance, they have experts ready to help. Once you have selected your hardscape, the next step is to decide on the placement of the hardscape within the aquarium. This is a vital decision and is worth taking some time over. James explains that when working with clients and customers, he often recommends that once they have placed their hardscape, they leave it for a period of 24 hours or more before progressing. James says this allows time for people to consider their placement and have a look at it with fresh eyes. James adds that in a tank of this size, it is often easier to direct the initial placement of the hardscape from outside of the aquarium to make sure that it is correct. James explains that when placing the hardscape, we are trying to recreate nature, so it is important to create a natural flow of hardscape in which each piece seems to flow naturally into the next, as though the current of a river or stream had pushed the hardscape into place over time. To help achieve this, James places the largest piece of hardscape first. This is the main piece, from which all other pieces will take their direction. Then the other pieces of hardscape are added in descending order of size or importance, with the smallest or least significant pieces added last. James explains that because a nature aquarium is really an underwater garden, we must consider how the plants will grow in when placing the hardscape. Smaller stones often become hidden by plants as the nature aquarium progresses, so James uses quite large stones where he wants to avoid this. Here you can see how James takes time to manipulate the rock until it complements the natural flow of the wood, which is the main or central piece of hardscape in this layout. Once planted, James lightly moves the substrate around the rock to create a more secure hold and natural effect. Because this aquarium is viewable from all sides, it is important that the hardscape on every side is beautiful and well balanced. The planting of a tank of this size is a rare event, so it always attracts a few welcome spectators. As you can see, James continues to reposition the hardscape until he is completely happy with its placement. Once a tank is planted, it is quite difficult to move the hardscape without damaging the overall layout, so it is important to get it right at this stage. James explains that he wanted to create a bold, dramatic aquascape with a good sense of scale that would look different from each side. He explains that his inspiration for this aquascape came from one of nature's most dramatic forms, the volcano. James adds that this is why he created a mountainous aquascape, adding an Aponogeton crispus red to represent the volcanic eruptions. The detail of the aquascape adds a good sense of scale to the aquarium. James entitled this aquascape Nature's Chaos because he feels it represents the chaotic beauty of nature and as a tribute to the photographic work of Elliot Porter. Once James is happy with the layout, he smooths the substrate with a paintbrush and then pours some more substrate over the hardscape to create a natural, more aged appearance. James then places some substrate supports into the substrate to prevent it from rolling down into the outer areas. Because they are narrow, they take up only a minimum of space and do not adversely affect plant growth. The substrate supports may be visible for a couple of weeks after the planting, but the plants will rapidly grow over them and obscure them from view. James explains that most aquascaping enthusiasts know how frustrating it is to bank up your substrate beautifully, only to discover in the morning that it is all rolled forward and collapsed. These substrate supports prevent that from happening, so they are a welcome addition to his aquascaping kit. Once the substrate and hardscape layouts are completed, the next and final stage is the planting. Please note that some substrates may need to be cycled for 1 to 3 weeks before planting. Here, James is securing some Physidens fontanus onto a small piece of hardscape wood. As you can see, some good aquascaping tools are essential. Physidens fontanus is a variety of moss. James explains that he wanted to use moss in this aquascape to add a sense of age and drama to the scape. The moss is first secured to a small piece of hardscape wood. The moss comes on a wire mesh, which should be first bent into the shape of the hardscape before being secured onto it, with a suitable material that will not degrade in the water. An extra pair of hands come in very useful here. The moss-covered pieces of hardscape are then placed into the aquascape in line with the overall flow of the hardscape layout. James explains that whilst these pieces may look a little odd now, the moss will eventually grow in to give a beautiful and natural appearance to the layout. Here you can see James attaching some moss to one of the larger pieces of wood by bending the wire mesh into place and then pushing it firmly into the crevice of the wood. Next, James prepares the Eleocharis parvula, also known as hairgrass, for planting into the foreground. James has already separated the plants into small portions to make it easier to plant them and achieve optimum plant growth. James uses a high-quality pair of aquascaping pincets that allow the plants to be gripped firmly without damaging them. This is essential to successful planting, because the Eleocharis parvula must be inserted into the substrate firmly enough to prevent it from simply coming loose and floating up to the top. Notice how James places several plants onto the water surface. He explains that in a tank of this size, it is often easier to plant this way because you can plant several stems more quickly. James explains that to achieve a beautiful carpet of plants, he has found it helps to plant the stems in a repeated pattern, like the shape of a number 5 on a dice. For more advice on working with carpeting plants, please view the tips and tricks section of the Green Machine's website at www.thegreenmachineonline.com. Here are some more of James's aquascapes currently on display in the Green Machine. Next, James plants some Storagine repens. Again, James has separated the plants into smaller sections to make it easier to plant and to encourage optimum plant growth. James plants Storagine repens in the mid-ground of the aquarium. He explains that he wants to create a graduated effect going up the side of the mountain. James regularly sprays the plants with water to prevent them from drying out. Next, James plants some Pagostemon erectus to create a taller forest-like area of plants, adding an additional element of complexity to the aquascape. Here you can see how the different textures and colours of the plants are already beginning to naturally complement each other. Next, James plants some Rotala Valachi. This has already been separated into small portions. James explains that the Rotala Valachi will be used to add some red hues to complement the use of Aponogeton crispus red. Then James plants the Aponogeton crispus red. James removes the rock wool and then pushes the plant firmly into the substrate. Next, James plants the Hemianthus calitrichoides, otherwise known as HC or Cuba. This is usually used as a carpeting plant, in which case it should be planted exactly as the Eleocharis parvula. But James explains that he will be using the Cuba differently in this aquascape. He wants it to create a hanging Garden of Babylon feel, so he leaves the rock wool on the plant and pushes it tightly into the crevice of the hardscape. It is important to push it in as firmly as possible. The firmer it is placed into the hardscape, the tighter the plant will grip the wood when it grows in. James explains that he wanted to use the Cuba in this way to add an extra element of complexity or natural chaos to the aquascape. He chose the Cuba because he knew that the bright green of the Cuba would contrast beautifully against the dark green of the mosses. The small leaf size of the Cuba also helped to create a greater sense of scale in the aquascape, and when it grows over the wood, it will soften the contours of the wood beautifully. Next, James adds some Blixa japonica. The plants are separated into smaller portions before being planted into the higher ground of the aquascape between the two pieces of hardscape. Now the planting is complete, the aquarium is filled with water and begins to come to life. As we rotate around the aquarium, you can see the importance of the 360-degree view and why it is vital that each side is perfectly balanced. That is why an island layout, viewable from 360 degrees, is one of the most challenging layouts for any aquascaper. Now that the plants are growing in and the fish have been added, the aquascape has finally come to life and can be truly appreciated. James explains that the choice of fish is very important in the nature aquarium. Because he wanted to achieve a greater sense of scale, James chose small shoaling fish and also added some Corydoras to create some movement at the bottom of the aquascape. The Green Machine are nature aquarium specialists, so they specialise in fish that are suitable for planted tanks. Primarily small shoaling fish and Corydoras. As you can see, the planted tank is the best and most natural environment in which to keep fish. You can see the small bubbles of oxygen rising from the plants as they naturally oxygenate the water. For all the latest information, news and tips and tricks, please visit the Green Machine website at www.thegreenmachineonline.com.